Hey everybody, Ray here. Today we're going to make a step-up box for exercise. We're going to make it just using scraps and junk that I've got laying around here in the garage. So if that has interest to you, stick around. And don't forget, hit that like button and subscribe, and thanks. The first thing we'll do is get down our fold-down workbench. I'll tell you what, this is one of the best projects that I've ever done. This thing just comes in handy. I use it all the time as an extra work area. And then to boot, I've got a storage cabinet that hides this and it stores all my paint and stains. I'll put a video on how to do both of these on there because I highly recommend you do one of these for yourself. So looking around the garage here, at one point I had grabbed a couple of wooden wine cases and I had used them for storage, and now they're just sitting around taking up space, and I was about ready just to throw them away. But what I decided to do was, this could be the platform that I could use for my step-up workbench. I want my workbench to be about 13, 14 inches off the ground, so when I step up on it, that's the distance that I'll step up to do my exercises. This isn't quite that tall, so what I did was I cut some, these happen to be just 1x4s, I cut some 1x4s that would fit inside here and get me up to the height that I want. So when I put my extra top on here that I'll show you in a minute, this is going to be right at about 14 inches. Now you'll see that I'm just using scraps. This is a 1x4 scrap. This happens to be a piece of plywood that's cut pretty close to the 1x4, and it's close enough for this project. It just doesn't have to be exact. So what we're going to do is cut 8 of those, which I've already done. You can see this one here is even a little wider, just scraps. And then we're going to build our legs like this to fit inside of our box here that will make a nice, sturdy, step-up workbench for us. Now, if you don't happen to have an old wine crate laying around like I do, I mean, you could very simply just build yourself a box like this and then put a top on it. I have to put an extra top on this one anyway. So this is 13 inches, I believe, wide. It's 13 inches wide, and it's 13 inches deep and 21 inches wide. And you could just take some 1x or whatever and build yourself a box like this. So you don't have to have this as a starting point. Just make your starting point. Make it to whatever dimensions you feel comfortable with. I want to make sure, for in my case, I like the fact that this is 13 inches wide, so when I'm stepping up on here, I have plenty of room for my feet, and I don't want it to rock around on me. So that's the dimensions that I'm comfortable with. Now for the next step, we're going to want to secure our corners into our box. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to drill 4 holes to pre-drill for screws. So I'm going to put 4 holes here. I'm going to use a 1-inch wood screw. And then I will glue these 2 boards together like this, brad nail them, put them inside here with some glue on this side, and I'll screw them in. That'll make a really strong and permanent way to put those corners in there. And it shouldn't take too long to do that. If I'm using wood screws and I'm going through one board to get to another, I always pre-drill my holes so my screws can get through there more easily and they don't bind up when they get to the second board. Next, I'll apply some glue, and then I'm going to brad nail my corners together. making sure I get the edges nice and flush. The brad nails are really just to hold these together temporarily so I can put the screws in. And now what I'll do is I'll run some glue along these edges and I'll position that in there and I'll run the screws in. As you'll probably notice, I'm not being crazy careful with how I glue this. I want it to be glued in there and I want it to be glued solid, but I'm not going to worry too much about spreading the glue perfectly. It's not going to go anywhere. Oh, you know what? I only need to glue it halfway up. Got to think sometimes. I'm going to clean that glue off of there. If you ever goof up on your glue like that, I only wanted half of my board glued. Just wipe the glue off and then get a wet paper towel or a rag and come back and wipe it off with that. It's water soluble, so that glue will come right off. Then you don't have to worry about it. But you want to do it right away because you don't want the glue to set in there and cause problems for you. Okay, so put a little bit more glue up here. We're going to drop that in our corner. I want that to stay nice and tight in the corner, so I'm just going to throw a couple of clamps on here real quick. That'll hold that just till I can get my screws in there and get them snugged up. Okay, I'll put the rest of the screws in that leg and that leg will be done. So we've put all 4 of our corner legs on here. What it looks like from the inside. Stand it up, it's nice and flat. I think it'll be very secure. The only thing I'm a little worried about is this is about an 1/8 inch board here on the bottom of this box. And it's 2 of them. It's got a seam right here. So I'm a little uncomfortable with that, with putting my full weight on there. I don't know if you can see, but just even with my finger, when I put my finger on there, you can see that bowing a little bit. So I don't want to put my full weight on there. So what I'll do is I'll take a piece of, I've got some 1/8 inch scrap right here. And what I'll do is I'll just cut that piece of 1/8 inch scrap down. I'll do this with my table saw, but you could use a circular saw. But I'll just cut that down so it's even with the edge of this, and that'll give me the extra strength that I need on the top of this platform. So we cut our extra 1/8 inch piece of plywood here to put on the top. So we're just simply going to fit that on the top. You saw that I ran some glue under there. I wasn't particularly careful about how I ran the glue. I'm just not too worried about it for something that I'm just going to be stepping on. We'll line up our edges. And then we're just going to pop that in there with our brad nail gun. I'm just using little 1.5 inch brads, which should be just fine. Get my first 2 corners lined up. So I just took another 1/8 inch piece of plywood. I put glue on the other side, and then I just brad nailed it in around the edges. So now I've got the extra strength that I need on the top of this thing, and it's not too heavy to pick up and move around. Let's test it out. So here's our step-up box. It came out pretty nicely. It's nice and solid. I don't feel as though when I get up here I need to worry about it moving around. So came out pretty good. It's light enough to pick up, move around where I need it. So I did all this work so I can do all the exercise work. Well, thanks for watching. You know, I guess now I can take this thing inside and proceed with my workout, which is going to be a lot less fun than making this project. Thanks again. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Cajon drum.